Brother John, how are you, my friend?
I'm very well, Peter. Thanks so much for being with us. Look, we've been listening to reporting and reading it all morning long about a disagreement in the Situation Room between you and Dr. Anthony Fauci about the efficacy of hydroxychloroquine.
Yeah.
Can you explain to me the nature of this disagreement?
We're off the air now, right?
No, we're on air, Peter.
Oh, we're on air.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Let me focus on the issue at hand. Does hydroxychloroquine work? That was a subject in the task force meeting this Saturday. The facts of the matter are the following. First of all, FEMA has 29 million tablets sitting in a warehouse. That's number one. Number two, John, at the task force meeting, there was unanimous agreement that FEMA would immediately begin surging hydroxy into the hot zones to be dispensed only between the doctor and the patient decision, not the federal government. So that's number two. Number three, you may find this interesting. In the city that you live in New York, in the New York Health and Hospitals system, virtually every patient now that comes in presenting COVID-19 symptoms is given a cycle of hydroxychloroquine. And when I discussed this last night with Mitch Katz, who's the head of that system, I asked him, are you doing that because the federal government is telling you or because you think it may work? And he said quite clearly that it may work.
Right.
The fourth fact I want to say, and then we'll get to the politics of this, the fourth fact I want to say is that there's now numerous scientific studies that indicate potential efficacy, including, John, and this is important, a study that was just published in the last few days from Wuhan, which is one of the first randomized studies with a control group, and it showed very clearly that 80% in the control group did very well versus 50. So there was that discussion on Saturday, and if we didn't have disagreement and debate in the Trump administration, this administration would not be as strong as it is.
Let me just say one thing. I'm not interested in the politics of it. I'm only interested in the science of it. When you talk about that study out of Wuhan, we should note, yes, that was the only study we've seen so far with a control group, but it wasn't, hang on, it wasn't double blind, which means that the doctors who were using it knew who was getting it. It was also with only moderately ill patients. Finally, again, on the science of it, I want to play you something that Dr. Anthony Fauci has said about hydroxychloroquine. Listen.
Sure.
The data are really just at best suggestive. There have been cases that show there may be an effect, and there are others to show there's no effect.
Okay.
So I think in terms of science, I don't think we could definitively say it works.
So why is Dr. Anthony Fauci, the lead infectious disease doctor in the country, wrong about this, in your opinion?
Sure. I let him speak for himself, John, but I would have two words for you: second opinion. And in terms of the studies that exist, I think you would grant me that there are numerous studies on this which show preliminary therapeutics.
I know three. Hang on, Peter.
John,
Peter,
hang on.
I have to ask a question. I let you go to 4 points at the beginning. I just wanted to follow. You're saying a second opinion here. What are your qualifications to weigh in on medicine more than Dr. Anthony Fauci? Why should we listen to you and not Dr. Fauci?
Well, let me suggest, John, that later in the day you have William Grace on, another famous doctor in the city of New York. He can talk eloquently about this. But, John, doctors disagree about things all the time. My qualifications in terms of looking at the science is that I'm a social scientist. I have a PhD, and I understand how to read statistical studies, whether it's in medicine, the law, economics, or whatever.
I'm sorry, that doesn't qualify you to treat patients. You know it doesn't qualify you to treat patients.
John. All I'm asking for you to understand, John, is that right in your city, in the New York Health and Hospital system, virtually every patient getting COVID is presenting with COVID-19 symptoms is given hydroxy. Now, you talk to Mitch Katz, talk to William Grace, and I simply present that. And I think this is important for your viewers. There are downsides to this. There can be, in some cases, negative effects.
Deadly.
Yes, that's true. and it's related to heart and related to vision. And that's why the task force was very clear in its decision that it had to be the patient-doctor relationship that would prescribe the drug. But John, let's do this.
Hang on, Peter. Hang on, Peter. And now it's my turn.
Sure.
Let's take turns here. Okay.
Absolutely.
I've spoken to Dr. Rob Gore, who is on the front lines treating patients inside a hospital in Brooklyn. And as you said, yes, they are giving patients hydroxychloroquine. When I asked him whether it works, he says, we don't know. Yeah,
correct.
They simply don't know. I asked Dr. Daniel Varga in New Jersey, are you giving hydroxychloroquine to patients? He says yes. I asked him, does it work? He says, we don't know. The difference here, the difference that you are making and the difference that you are taking, the additional step you are taking is, as a social scientist with no medical training, is you are now saying that you think it works, while Dr. Anthony Fauci, who is an infectious disease doctor who has been running the top infectious disease agency for decades, says we don't know if it works. So my question
May I
to
respond?
you, my question to you again is,
that lengthy.
why should we? Well, you were lengthy too.
Sure.
Why should we listen to you and not Dr. Anthony Fauci?
So you presented a false case there. Basically, what I have said, and the only thing I have said, is that the scientific studies that I have seen point to the possibility that it has both therapeutic efficacy as well as possible prophylactic efficacy. And one thing I would ask you to do, John, is you speak to these doctors and nurses and other people at the front lines, ask them how many of them are taking hydroxy as a prophylactic in the war zone. So I'd appreciate it here, John. This is a situation where this drug could save lives, and I think there needs to be a debate. And you're right that I'm not the arbiter of this, but there's a lot of doctors out there who are on one side, and there's a lot of doctors on the other side. There's science going on. We are at war here, and what we're trying to do is make sure as few people die as possible. And when I look at a study, just this latest one, I read it from Wuhan, and there's a control group where 80% do well
Peter.
and only 50% don't. I mean, you could be a plumber and read that and come to the same conclusion, John.
Peter,
I don't know why you're so hard about this.
I'm not.
Would you take it?
Would
you take it if you got sick?
Would I take it if I got sick?
Would you take it, knowing what you know now?
No, I would listen to my doctor about
Good.
whether or not
That's
I should
exactly
take it if
what
I
you
got
should
sick.
do.
I would consult
That's
my
exactly
doctor.
what you
I
should
would
do.
not consult
That's all we're
someone
asking
involved
to
with
do.
trade policy.
We're taking
I would not
29
consult with someone with trade policy,
I
Peter.
agree.
And my question,
I'm
do you
not
want a doctor?
prescribing anything.
Do you want a medical
I'm not
doctor and
prescribing
internist?
anything,
Do you
John.
want an internist striking trade deals with Asian countries? Well, no,
Touche,
but that's my point.
but you're setting up a false narrative
I'm not.
here.
I swear to
John,
God, I'm not. You had a debate inside the Situation Room with the nation's top infectious disease doctor, the man who was in charge, to a certain extent, of the nation's medical response to this. And all he said, he wants this to work. Everyone wants this to work. All he has said is, let's let the testing and the science decide. What you seem to be saying is, I've read a study out of Wuhan, and I decided.
That's so unfair, John. In that meeting, I had over 100 pages of numerous studies that
I know of three.
Put there.
I know of three.
And there's many more, and I'll get them to you today, John. But here's the thing: the issue wasn't about me offering my medical opinion. The question was whether we should take the 29 million doses in the FEMA storehouses and surge them into the zones, and it was unanimous, John, in that task force meeting to do so on the advice of patient to his doctor. So that's the only question I posed.
But it's look.
Well, you
Dr.
weren't there, John. All you're doing is reading a press account.
I'm going to ask a different question here. Dr. Anthony Fauci was asked at the briefing yesterday to weigh in on the efficacy of hydroxychloroquine, and the president wouldn't let him. So shouldn't we hear from the scientists on this at the briefing?
John, that's just an unfair question to ask me, okay? It's like if CNN wants to set up Dr. Fauci as the only authority on medicine and only rely on him, that's one set of facts. What I'm saying is doctors disagree all the time, and I have William Glass on your program today, John. Would you do me that favor?
Do you have reason to doubt the analysis of Dr. Anthony Fauci?
I agree with the analysis of Dr. Fauci in this sense. We don't have definitive 100% science to say that this